December doesn't ask politely. It doesn't wait for your timeline. It doesn't care what you were supposed to become. December tells the truth, and it tells the truth fast. And this weekend in Vegas, the NBA Cup did exactly that. 2 semifinal games, 4 teams, and one reminder: the league never stops teaching. Talent gets you here, but readiness decides who stays. The New York Knicks didn't just survive their moment, they owned it. And on the other side, one of the league's brightest young teams learned just how thin the margin really is when the lights turn all the way up. Different paths, different outcomes, but the same pressure. Tonight, we're breaking down both NBA semifinals. What held up, what cracked, and why Tuesday's final isn't just about who's playing. It's about who proved they can handle December when it pushes back. Because this time of year doesn't reward potential, it rewards composure. I'm Vincent Cooper, and this is Round Ball Rants. Let's get into it. Alright, now let's start in Vegas. Because when you strip the lights away, when you take the branding off the floor, when you forget for a moment that this is called the Emirates NBA Cup, what you're really watching in games like this is the truth. Truth under pressure. Truth when rotations tighten. Truth when the margin for error disappears. And on Saturday night, the New York Knicks told the league exactly who they are. This wasn't a survival win. This wasn't a fluke shooting night. This wasn't a young team learning on the fly. This was a 132-120 statement. One that ended the Knicks punching their ticket to the NBA Cup final. And there is no place to start other than Jalen Brunson. 40 points, 8 assists, total command. Not just scoring, ownership. Because this wasn't one of those nights where a guy gets hot and the defense just lives with it. This was Brunson reading the game like a chessboard. Feeling when to slow it down, feeling when to attack, feeling when to let the game breathe and when to choke it out. Every time Orlando nudged the door open, Brunson slammed it shut. A pull-up here, a drive through traffic there, a patient possession that turned into a dagger 3 when the defense blinked. That's now 4 straight games of 30 or more, but this one mattered differently. This wasn't November noise. This wasn't an empty gym. This was a neutral floor, national attention, real stakes. And Brunson didn't rise to the moment. He controlled it. And here's the thing that makes this Knicks run dangerous. This wasn't a one-man operation. Karl Anthony Towns gave them 29, and it wasn't soft. It wasn't just jumpers, it was spacing the floor, punishing switches, attacking mismatches before help could arrive. Every time Orlando tried to load up on Brunson, Towns made them pay. OG Anunoby added 24, and this is where the box score doesn't tell the full story. OG didn't just score, he stabilized. He defended multiple positions, killed runs before they grew legs, and hit shots at moments that broke belief. And then there's Mikal Bridges. Not loud, not flashy, just timely. Big shots when momentum was wobbling, defensive pressure that forced Orlando into tough decisions. The kind of presence that doesn't demand attention, but quietly shifts games. This was balance. It was structure. This was a team who knows who it is. Now let's talk about Orlando because they didn't fold. The Magic came out swinging. Jalen Suggs was on one. 25 points in the first half alone. Aggressive, confident, fearless. He wasn't just hitting shots. He was setting a tone. Telling the Knicks, you're not walking into this final for free. Paolo Banchero gave them 25 as well, carrying the offensive burden. Creating off the bounce, absorbing contact, trying to will something into existence. And for stretches, it worked. This game was tight early. The energy was real. The pace was up. You could feel that this meant something to both sides. But this is where December separates teams. Because when the game tightened, when the third quarter arrived and possession started to matter more, the Knicks elevated and the Magic ran into reality. Suggs slowed. Eventually, he left with a sore hip. Franz Wagner wasn't available, and suddenly the margin disappeared. The Knicks ripped off a run late in the third, a double-digit surge that flipped the entire game. And it wasn't fueled by chaos, it was fueled by execution. Correct reads, clean spacing, no panic. This is where depth shows up. This is where experience whispers instead of screams. And Orlando, as talented as they are, didn't have enough answers left. That's not a failure, that's a checkpoint. Because Orlando learned something here. They learned what it feels like when the floor shrinks. They learned what it costs when one injury changes everything. They learned that being good is different than being ready. And that lesson matters. But for the Knicks, this win goes deeper than advancing. This is 5 straight victories, 9 of their last 10. Over 60% shooting as a team in a game that mattered. And more importantly, they played with poise. No rushed possessions, no emotional swings, no cracks when the Magic made pushes. That tells you something. Because when people ask what the NBA Cup is really about, this is the answer. It's not banners, it's not money, it's not branding. It's pressure without excuses. It's December games that feel heavier than they're supposed to. It's neutral floors where crowd energy isn't carrying you. And it's moments where you find out who can organize themselves when things get tight. And on this night, the Knicks didn't just pass the test, they announced themselves. This version of New York isn't chasing validation. They're not trying to prove that they belong. They already know. And now, they're headed to the NBA Cup final with confidence, balance, and a leader who looks increasingly comfortable when the spotlight burns the hottest. The first semifinal was about control. This one was about survival. The San Antonio Spurs didn't dominate the Oklahoma City Thunder. They didn't overwhelm them. They didn't out-talent them. They outlasted them. 111 to 109. Spurs. And this game felt tight from the opening tip. Not chaotic, but tense. The kind of game where every possession carries weight and nothing feels free. Oklahoma City came in riding everything. 16 straight wins, confidence, continuity. A team that's been playing like the future has already arrived. And for most of the night, they looked exactly like that. SGA was steady, calm, methodical. 29 points, getting to his spots, controlling pace, keeping OKC organized, even when things got uncomfortable. He didn't force. He didn't panic. He played like the star who expects to be here. Chet Holmgren protected the rim, spaced the floor, and made life difficult inside. Jalen Williams kept attacking, kept pressure on the defense, kept San Antonio from ever feeling comfortable. But this is where single elimination basketball shows its teeth, because eventually, someone has to blink. And on this night, Oklahoma City blinked first. Not because they aren't good, not because they weren't ready, but because the game slowed down in ways they're still learning to manage. Late clock possessions got heavier. Reads that usually come naturally took an extra beat. Shots that normally fall came up just short. Against a team like San Antonio, that beat matters. This is the difference between playing free and playing precise. OKC didn't lose confidence, they lost margin. And in single elimination basketball, margin is everything. Now let's talk about why San Antonio was able to survive this. Because it starts with Victor Wembanyama. Coming back from injury, limited minutes, no guarantee of rhythm, and yet his presence changed the game. 22 points, 9 rebounds, just 21 minutes. But this wasn't about numbers, it was about gravity. Every possession Wemby was on the floor, Oklahoma City had to account for him. Vertically, horizontally, mentally. Shots at the rim felt heavier. Passing lanes felt tighter. Defensive decisions came a half second slower. That's not something that you scheme away. That's something that you feel. And San Antonio understood that. They didn't rush. They didn't chase the pace. They didn't try to win the game in one stretch. They stayed patient. They stayed connected. They trusted spacing, movement, and timing. When the game tightened late, when every shot felt heavier, the Spurs executed just enough. Not perfectly, not comfortably, but just enough. This wasn't a collapse by Oklahoma City. This was the margin. A missed three here, a turnover there, a contested look instead of a clean one. Against a team that stays organized, that's all it takes. And this is why this semifinal mattered. Because the NBA Cup doesn't just tell you who's talented. It tells you who can survive when the margin disappears. The Thunder didn't fail here. They learned. They learned how unforgiving single elimination basketball can be. How one or two empty possessions swing everything. How execution, not momentum, decides nights like this. This Thunder team is still very real, still dangerous, still the defending world champions. But Vegas reminded them of something important. Potential doesn't cash the check. San Antonio, meanwhile, didn't win because they were dominant. They won because they were steady. They absorbed the runs. They didn't fold late. They trusted their structure when the game screamed for hero ball. That's growth. That's maturity. And now the Spurs walk out of this semifinal not celebrating dominance, but knowing that they can survive discomfort. Two semifinals. Two very different stories. One team controlled its moment. One team endured it. And both paths now lead to Tuesday night, where the margin disappears entirely. Before we get into the NBA Cup final, I want to take a quick second to talk about our partners over at Dubby. Because if you've been riding with the show, you know that Dubby isn't just a sponsor. It's part of how we get through these late nights, early mornings, and long recording sessions without crashing. And this week, they just dropped not a new flavor, but they just re-released one of their best ones. Tiger's Blood. Yeah, that Tiger's Blood. Fruity, smooth, no chalky aftertaste, no sugar spike, and no crash later. Just clean energy when you need it. Whether you're grinding through work, hitting the gym, or locking in for a night of NBA Cup basketball. And here's the thing, we're not just sipping it and moving on. Tomorrow, Tuesday, we're doing a full breakdown and taste test on the Dubby Dime, our dedicated Dubby segment that debuts tomorrow, where I'll give you the hottest reviews, the flavor profiles, and where it stacks up with the rest of Dubby's lineup. So stay tuned for that. And if you want to try it yourself, head over to dubby.gg and use our code RoundballRants to get a discount on your order. That's dubby.gg, promo code RoundballRants. All right, let's get back into the NBA Cup final, because Tuesday night, that's when everything comes together. Now we can zoom out, because after two semifinals, two very different paths, and two very different lessons, we've arrived at the same destination, the Emirates NBA Cup final. Tuesday night, New York Knicks, San Antonio Spurs. And what makes this matchup fascinating isn't just the names on the jerseys, it's how these teams got here. The Knicks didn't survive their semifinal. They controlled it. They walked into Vegas knowing exactly who they were, leaned on their structure, leaned on their leader, and never lost their footing. That matters. Because teams that control moments tend to stay calm when the stakes rise. San Antonio, they didn't control anything. They endured. They absorbed pressure. They played through discomfort. They made just enough right decisions when the margin disappeared. That matters too. Because teams that survive moments learn how to stay connected when things get tight. So Tuesday isn't just Knicks versus Spurs. It's control versus survival. It's structure versus strain. Let's start with New York. Everything about the Knicks right now is built around clarity. They know where their offense lives. They know who the ball belongs to. They know how they want to defend when the game slows down. Jalen Brunson isn't guessing. He's dictating. He's comfortable letting possessions breathe, comfortable taking the shot when it's there, and comfortable trusting his teammates when defenses load up. Karl Anthony Towns stretches the floor in ways that bend coverage. OG Anunoby stabilizes things, guarding multiple positions, hitting timely shots, keeping New York connected. Mikal Bridges fills the gaps. He moves the needle without hijacking possessions. This team is a team that doesn't feel rushed. And in a final, that's dangerous. But San Antonio brings a very different energy into this game. The Spurs don't win with calm. They win with connection. They move, they cut, they share. And in the center of it all is Victor Wembanyama. Not just as a scorer, but as a presence. His gravity changes geometry. Passing lanes shrink, shots at the rim feel heavier, defenders hesitate just long enough for San Antonio's offense to stay alive. And here's the part that matters most about the Spurs. They don't need Wembanyama to dominate every possession. They need him to exist. Because when he's on the floor, everything bends towards him. And that opens space for everyone else. That's how they survived Oklahoma City. That's how they stayed steady late. That's how they won a game that came down to the inches. And before we even talk about picks or lean one way or the other, we've got to acknowledge where San Antonio actually is. Because this wasn't supposed to happen yet. This was supposed to be a learning year, a building year, a next season conversation. Instead, they're in the Emirates NBA Cup final. That tells you everything you need to know about their timeline. The Spurs didn't accelerate the rebuild. They arrived early. They've already crossed the hardest bridge, going from potential to presence. They know how they want to play. They know who they're building around. And now they know what these moments feel like. That matters more than a trophy. Because teams that arrive early don't disappear. They stay. So when you look at Tuesday night, the pressure points are clear. For New York, it's about pace control. If the Knicks can slow this game down, force San Antonio into half-court possessions, and keep Brunson in rhythm, they'll like where this ends up. For San Antonio, it's about disruption. They don't need to win early. They need to keep it close, keep it uncomfortable, and force decisions late. Because survival teams don't mind the chaos. This final isn't about who's hotter. It's about who stays organized when the game tightens. Because the NBA Cup has quietly revealed something important this season. When the game starts to feel heavier, when the floor feels smaller, when the margin disappears, you stop seeing potential. You start seeing habits. New York's habit is control. San Antonio's habit is resilience. So if you're asking me where I land on this one, Yeah, I'm leaning New York. Not because that's easy, not because it's the obvious choice, but because when everything tightens, I trust clarity more than chaos. I trust a team that knows where its offense lives. I trust a group that's already shown it can control a moment instead of surviving it. But let me be clear, this margin is razor thin. One missed rotation, one loose rebound, one cold stretch, and this thing swings the other way very fast. San Antonio has the kind of presence that warps games. They don't need dominance. They need a few breaks, and then suddenly the math changes. So yes, we are riding with the New York Knicks, but this isn't a lock. This is respect for how small the difference really is. And on Tuesday night, we'll find out which one holds. Before we get into the bounce, I just want to take a moment and say thank you. Friday's episode, the numbers on YouTube, that turnout mattered. Not just because of the numbers, but because it showed us something more important. It showed us that what we're building here is real. People showed up, they listened, and they stayed. And when you're trying to grow something from the ground up, that changes how you see the work. It changes how you walk into the next episode. It changes how much belief you carry into the grind. So if you clicked, listened, shared, commented, or came back for another episode, know that it didn't go unnoticed. This show doesn't work without you. And that support told me that we're not just experimenting anymore. We're building something concrete here. If you've been enjoying the ride, the best way to support the show is simple. Follow, subscribe, rate it, share it with someone who loves basketball or life the way that you do. And if you ever want to be part of the conversation, our call-in line is 216-452-8813. We're listening. We're waiting. All right, let's finish this the right way. December has a way of feeling endless. Early on, everything feels heavy. The calendar looks long. The energy, it feels stretched thin. And then you're not even thinking about the progress. You're thinking about survival. You're just trying to get through the day. But we're halfway through December. Something shifts. We can see the finish line. The weight doesn't disappear, but it now has shape. You can measure it. Now you can look back and say, I've already carried this for a while. And that matters. That's what tonight's games were really about. The Knicks didn't win because they found something new. They won because they trusted what they've already built. The Spurs didn't arrive because everything went right. They arrived because they stayed connected when things got uncomfortable. Neither team is done. Neither story is complete. But both can see where this thing is going. And that's where December meets real life. Because when the finish line comes into view, the work changes. You stop asking, can I do this? And you start asking, how do I get there? That's a quieter question. A steadier one. It's about showing up again. Staying organized, not rushing, not panicking. Just putting one foot in front of the other. Even when you're tired. If this month has felt heavy for you, that doesn't mean that you're behind. It means that you've been carrying something. And the fact that you're still here, still listening, still moving, still trying, that means more than you probably give yourself credit for. We've got a big week ahead. Not because everything suddenly gets easier, but because you've already proven that you can handle it. So dig in, lift your eyes just enough to see the end, and take that next step. You don't need to sprint, you just need to finish. I'm Vincent Cooper. This was Roundball Rants. Thank you for spending part of your day with me. And remember, it's not just basketball, it's therapy with a bounce.